Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers Chat, Talk, whatever you want to say, here on the channel today as we get set up to discuss what is now a 2-game losing streak for the Oilers, 8-2-0 in our last 10. So not everything is all bad. However, we do not like what happened against Tampa Bay. We especially do not like what happened against Florida, and we'd love to get back to what we liked about that 8-game win streak. Friends, the Oilers have a couple of things to take care of here over the next 48 hours ahead of their game on Tuesday. But ahead of that, we'll discuss kind of a couple of key points I want to get through and obviously see if there is something quite simple we could do that you'd figure if we could do it, we would have already done it. All right, friends, let's get to it. If you are new to the channel, hop aboard. Climb aboard that subscribe train. We are just under 1,100 subscribers away here on Dolynny TV from 15,000. So that's the goal by the end of the year. Of course, hit 10,000 early on in January this year. So it'd be pretty nifty to do 10 and 15 in the same calendar year. Without that, well, let's go here. The new lines for the Oilers at practice today, friends. Kane, McDavid, Hyman, RNH, Draisaitl, Fogle, Janmark, McLeod, Brown, Ernie, Hamlin, Gagne. So that's your new top 12 forwards. Ernie in there more or less as a placeholder. Even if Derek Ryan is injured, Ernie is only in there as a placeholder until he gets healthy. That is, of course, you swap Ernie for Mr. Derek Ryan, and that's your top 12 every single night until we make a massive change. Nurse, Ceci, Ekholm, Bouchard, Kulak, Desharnais, and Gleason. Don't get too excited about that. So that's your new lines. What I will emphasize is Kane and McDavid are back together alongside Hyman on the top line. We know that line's been productive at times this year and hopefully gets Evander Kane back to scoring goals because the Oilers are successful when Kane scores goals in bunches. But realistically, here's the bigger discussion to be had, friends. We continue to have Connor Brown in the top 9. I don't want to sit here after 2 losses in a row and piling up an 8-game win streak where Connor Brown kind of still gets judged every game. I don't want to sit here and pile on Connor Brown, who's having a very disappointing season. I think mathematically he's on point for 3 points this season or something. That's a huge disappointment for a $4 million player. However, again, I don't think any of us that even were maybe some of you critical of the Connor Brown signing would have predicted he would only pretty much a third to almost 40% of the way through the season be on pace for just 3 points. I mean, you could have thought the guy was going to do bad, but bad for $4 million is still 15, 20 points as opposed to maybe your 40, 50 that I thought he was going to be capable of getting playing inside the Oilers' top 6. That is not the case. So, what do you got to do here, friends? We had the discussion yesterday about Phil Kessel, right? And this is where I go back to what I was saying a few moments ago is Phil Kessel, Patrick from the Oilers Fanatic, and I were talking on the way while I was driving this afternoon. And it's really a case of if the Oilers could sign Phil Kessel, if Phil Kessel wanted to sign with the Oilers, and if the Oilers were interested in signing Phil Kessel, you would have thought it would already have happened by now. Now here's the only thing I caveat to that. Why hasn't it happened? Well, simply put, we know Mr. Inaction himself, Ken Holland, is still general manager. Now that's not a slight against Ken Holland. That's just kind of the track record here over the course of the past 2 seasons. Now this year, in the first 4 months of the year, very minimal changes have ever happened to the roster. I think the biggest move prior to the trade deadline is and still will be Evander Kane, and very much so in the same light, that is what Phil Kessel would be if the Oilers decided to go out and target him. Now the thing is with the inaction is it's worked out the past 2 years rather beautifully. I'm not going to sit here and be like, man, Ken Holland's completely screwed the Oilers by not making a move prior to the new year. No, that's not the case. But what is the case right now is we're 2 days away from the holiday freeze. You go into the holiday freeze until a few days after Christmas, then you're into the new year, and you're kind of coming up on that time where the inaction from Ken Holland usually stops and things start heating up, right? So as much as it hasn't happened yet, well, again, that's just Ken Holland's MO. I'm not going to worry about that because I've worried about that for the past 3 months. No, what I'm going to worry about now is that it is time to start worrying about upgrading this roster. You've got a guy like Phil Kessel, I think apparently thinking about signing in the Swiss League, so keep that in mind as well. And then, right, what would his contract be? If he goes overseas, signs in the Swiss League, his contract's no better than $775, right? So the Oilers can easily afford $775 for Phil Kessel in terms of exchanging Adam Erne down to the minors. That's done and dusted and easy as pie, but then you also got to remember Dylan Holloway's coming back just after the Christmas holidays, hopefully. So there's a ton to this roster that could still go under works. But let's go back to these lines just a moment here, friends. You think about it, realistically, in the grand scheme of things for the Oilers, Sam Gagner and Derek Ryan are interchangeable. They're both guys that can take draws. They're both guys that can kind of play all minutes on the ice if you want them to. They have the skills to. Not that I'm going to trust Derek Ryan to run the second power play as much as Sam Gagner, but again, that's fair enough, right? That's kind of the player build. But you look at it here is, look at this Oilers roster. You line up where Phil Kessel, of all guys, would fit in on the right wing. He's right in behind Zach Hyman, as pretty much Jesse Puljujarvi and Kailer Yamamoto were interchangeable last year behind Zach Hyman, because these are pretty much the forwards we had, however you break it down. So really for the Oilers, the big thing here is going to be figuring out what that first step of action is when it comes to changing the roster. And I just bring up Phil Kessel because it is the simplest, easiest move you can make for the lowest risk, lowest cost, lowest everything to upgrade this roster right as it looks, right? You force out Adam Erne out of the lineup, you move Warren Foegele down from the second line to the third, Janmark from the third to the fourth, and put in Phil Kessel there. And whether you think Phil Kessel's really got anything to add to the Oilers or not, you got to figure he can put up more than 1 point in almost 30 games like Connor Brown has. So at the end of the day, it's going to be an add, as well as Adam Erne. What's he realistically done for the Oilers? So yeah, you kind of get going there, right? Is like Phil Kessel would be a nice little add. But again, you got to also remember that at the end of the day is, as much as we might not like Connor Brown right now, because the Oilers fan base is a very much so, what are you doing for me right now? Not what did you do for me 2 games ago kind of thing. And Adam Erne really hasn't shown much since maybe the first few games of the season, and then hasn't been really activated over the past little bit. What you got to remember is these guys need to stick around, right? Connor Brown, if you placed him on waivers, he'd still be in the Oilers organization. Ain't nobody going to go out there and claim him. Maybe take a flyer on him if they're hurting for forwards, but I don't think anyone's looking for him. I don't think anyone's looking for Adam Erne. So when you think about it, even when we get to the end of the season, we have our regular top 12 going into the playoffs, you are going to very well see these guys at some point in a playoff game. Connor Brown would probably get one. Adam Erne would probably get 1 or 2 at an injury level as well. So end of the day is, just because we're not necessarily happy with the guys we have in the lineup right now, doesn't mean they're just going to magically disappear when we make the upgrades. So that's the beautiful part is, yeah, you know what, we need to upgrade on them, but they're also going to be here to serve us when we need them. And that's the big thing, is you don't want to destroy and tear these guys down, because trust me, a guy like Connor Brown has a struggling regular season, very well a guy that would be a sneaky good player in the playoffs all of a sudden for no explainable reason. So friends, that's kind of where I'm at, right? As much as we'd love to upgrade on Connor Brown and Adam Erne right now, they're kind of pieces that they'll fit somewhere along the way anyhow. But a guy like Phil Kessel, let me tell you, looks more and more attractive day in, day out, as the second line and down struggle to create offense, struggle to create the necessary change in the hockey games, right? I mean, that 8-game win streak, as beautiful as it was, where we would be without Evan Bouchard and what he was doing, I do not want to find out, because Bouchard was a key in the back half of that win streak. At least the last 4 games, Bouchard was a generator of everything for the Edmonton Oilers. Friends, I'm Tyson, this is Dolynny TV. I'm up on out of here.